Okay. Can anybody hear me now?
There we go, coach. You're unmuted
There we
now.
go. Okay, so I got to start again. All right. So what I was saying is, please take notes. This first 40 minutes is literally just going to be me trying to give you all the information that I can, and then the second we'll do is we'll just kind of take a break, and I'll give you guys an opportunity to, get up, stretch your legs, get some water, and then come back on. Same link, and I'll answer any questions you guys have. Okay. So athletes, parents, whatever you guys are whoever is in here, and I appreciate you guys all being in here. Do take a minute and take some notes during this one. I'm not gonna blow through it, but I'm gonna go through this, without taking any questions at that point, and then we're gonna do the questions at the end. Hopefully, you guys are all good there. Let's get started. Okay, so everyone can see my screen, right?
Yes.
Thumbs up. Okay, screen is up. Cool. Okay, so off we go here. I'm going to start off with just the simple understanding that, as we address the off season, our goal really, with athletic paradigm, is to help Canadian parents, athletes, and coaches take the guesswork out of what the off season should be. What it should really look like for high level and potentially high level football players. In many ways, football is a sport that's kind of detached in Canada from the feedback into the inner workings of high level play. And you would think with the border being right there, we would have access to it, but oftentimes it's not really the case. It can cause confusion for a lot of people. AP, we try to address 5 key gaps in our off-season programs. These first 5 things I'm going to go over are present in all of our programs, whether it be online or in person, because I've really identified them as the key things that are missing in this particular demographic. And the first is just speed and power development. There are many ways to get stronger, but only a few ways to get faster. And that's what the biggest takeaway from speed and power that athletes need to understand. Getting stronger is considerably easier than getting faster. And it will happen unintentionally as you complete your growth spurts without you even really trying. Just your body growing is going to get you stronger. Getting faster, not so much. Speed doesn't work like that. Speed is the single most important skill that you can develop if you want to create opportunities for yourself in the game of football at any position, with the exception of kicker. So that's another one that really needs to be spoken about, I think, more. Even lineman positions will find that athletes of equal size will show speed and quickness as the differentiating factor for scholarship opportunities, for starting roles, for making teams. And with that in mind, every football athlete should find the opportunity within the 10-month offseason to do at least 4 to 6 months of true and genuine speed work. Got some key points up there. I'm just going to pause when we get to the key points in case anyone needs to, take a minute and write them down. Back to it. All right. So in terms of positional IQ development, okay, this is another one that we address in all of our packages, and understand serious players should be watching the game played at higher levels than their own. So as if you're a parent, you're looking at your kid, he's serious about this game, and you think he might be serious about the game, check and see, are they willing to watch the game when they're not playing or their friends not playing. Really, whenever possible, they should be watching U Sport, NCAA, CFL, NFL football. But that's only really one piece of the equation. Athletes really need to watch film of themselves and watch the game from a more tactical and observational perspective through extensive film study. YouTube is good for this. Many clubs now are filming games in high school, and whenever possible, parent film works well as well. But you should ask for film, both as parents and players. You should really advocate for that and initiate those conversations with your coaches and clubs. And honestly, you should insist on that investment, because really without film, the growth curve is considerably steeper, not to mention any potential for your recruiting is really nullified if you don't have film, because you're in an area where a lot of the schools that you want to go to won't travel all the way down here to see you play. So now it becomes the onus on you getting there, and something gets lost in the shuffle there. It's an important point. If you do have film yourself, seek to find someone to evaluate it and help you understand where you need to improve. The trap that many young players fall into is that the play caliber in this country is very spread out. There's pockets of good play throughout the whole country. maybe you're a pretty good player at the level you're at. So maybe you finish a game feeling like you don't have much to improve on because you scored 4 or 5 touchdowns or you had 20 tackles. That's not uncommon. But that success can really build a false sense of security. And then when you get to maybe a provincial tryout or a U.S. camp or a showcase or something, and there are other strong players there, you're kind of left wondering what happened and where you missed out. So that's a big point, getting that film and getting evaluated that way. Excuse me, regarding skill training, most young players find skill work the fun part of training. Football is a sport that can get skill in multiple ways because it's primarily an athlete game, not a skill game. I'm going to repeat that because a lot of people don't quite get what I'm saying. Hockey, basketball, soccer, these are skill games. These are games where if you haven't developed a certain skill set and skill level by the time you're in probably middle school to high school, the chances of you excelling in those games is really, really nullified. Football is not that. You cannot touch a football and not even understand what football is until high school, until late into high school. But if you're an exceptional athlete, you can become a pro at it. They will teach you the skill. What that means is that skills are easily taught in our game, but they take time to learn because the game is so nuanced. There's so much to learn of each position, and they all kind of intertwine. So if you have high quality skill training available in your area at your position, that's great. A day or two of that will definitely help your skill levels rise. But most people don't have that in their area. So for those that are in that boat, online skill training options are good for those of you who have, teammates and siblings looking to get work in with you, because it's very difficult to work skill in football by yourself. The key is sorting through the misinformation that lies on the internet and making sure whoever's running your online skill training is knowledgeable. And that's where the challenge becomes. If you do have a trusted source you like, then I'm all for it. Is a big part of the reason why we launched our AP membership for those that can't get to our live skill sessions and but are diligent enough to do the work on their own or film it and send it to us for correction. I wanted to make sure that there's an inexpensive way for kids like I was, because I was that kid. I wanted to do the right things, had all the drive in the world, didn't have any clue of what I should be doing. Now these kids are living at a different age. They can get on YouTube and learn pretty much any skill in the world, but they could also make a left turn and learn the wrong ways to do things. So I really wanted to make sure that I had something there that was the right way to go about it so that you could sleep easy knowing you're doing the right things and implementing them. Regarding nutrition, it's another key component that we add in all of our packages. We often think of football as a game of strength and size, and in some positions that's very true. Players, I find, are often sucked into the notion that they need to be bigger to be effective. And depending on the position, there's some merit to that argument. However, most positions don't need to bulk up in order to be effective. And even those that do really need to make sure that they don't add too much weight too fast, because what gets lost is usually way more valuable than the added weight they gained. The other point of note here is that you really cannot out-train your diet. Many athletes and parents think that just because you're very young, you can eat pretty much anything and perform the same. And that's simply not true. We include nutrition plans in our programs in order to, at the very least, give athletes and parents a semblance of what is required, what the required caloric intake should look like for their athlete to get to the weight that they're trying to play at. Now, we'll talk about how that should go in a little bit, but that's the biggest thing is even if your athlete isn't cooking their own meals, just having an idea of what it should look like to get 4,800 calories or 5,000 calories or whatever it is that they're needing to get will, I think, go a long way with helping them understand how to eat. Diets will come and go, but as a general rule, you should be centering your eating habits around food and ingredients that require as little processing as possible. Things that had parents, things that grow from the ground are generally pretty solid choices. Only bulk when running a minimum of 2 days a week, or you risk losing speed and mobility. And if you think about that in this semblance, bulking happens, for example, on, say, Christmas break, when your activity level comes way down, but your food intake goes up. If you can continue to eat heavy calories or a lot of calories while still moving heavily throughout the week, now whatever weight you gain is actually yours. Another point ask yourself, does getting heavier actually make you better at your position? This is one that I wish I would have learned earlier, because it really did cost me, even in my own career. When I made the jump from the CFL to the NFL was very bigger is better. Almost cost me my career much earlier than it should. I'm lucky that I remembered what it was that made me a unique player and got back down to my fighting weight. Also, bulking is simply achieved by taking in more calories than you burn daily. Some people are like, ask what's bulking. Basically, if I have less workouts, but take in more calories. And then cutting is when you take in less calories than you're burning. So maybe I have, like, for example, during training camp, maybe you have 2-a-days, but you're not getting in, you're maybe eating the same amount of calories, but your output has risen significantly. So that's when you'll end up cutting and leaning out. Some key points there, and one that I really want to make sure I point out and touch on is number 4 there. Power must be added at 4 times the weight added to move the new weight at the same rate. So for example, kid comes up to me, says, I'm 150 pounds. I want to get to 170 pounds. Okay. So for that 20 pounds that you add, you need to add 4 times that in power. So 80 pounds of power in order to move that new weight at the same speed that you moved your old weight. And that's what people don't talk about. They talk about getting bigger, but somehow think that moving a bigger object without adding power and torque is going to somehow make them faster. It just doesn't work like that. In most cases, athletes become slower when they bulk. So my suggestion is not to really bulk in high school. Let the weight come on at its own pace. But if you are going to bulk, just make sure you understand you better be adding power in order to move that weight. As it relates to multi-sport and the benefits of multi-sport, people have heard different things. Regardless of really what you've been told, football is not a sport meant to be played year-round. If done right, a player can completely reinvent themselves in a football offseason, in that span of 9 to 10 months. The idea of sports specialization that hockey has implanted in Canadian sport culture seems to be permeating into other sports like football. And I see many club and rep teams pressuring parents to play the game longer than the 4-month block that it was intended for at this level. This is a trap. I can say under no uncertain terms that playing multiple sports will only help you be a better football player at every position, with no exceptions. In fact, a bit of research on your favorite player, just a Google of them, will show you that they were likely at least a 2-sport athlete in high school. And most of the top guys were 3-sport athletes in high school, often at very high level in multiple sports. The added coaching in different environments, the different sport roles, the physical asks of each sport absolutely will shape you into a better athlete, which I can't remind you enough is the goal. Becoming a better athlete is the goal if you're trying to play high-level football. Like I said, they will teach you the skills you need, but you first have to be a good enough athlete to get on the field with those caliber athletes. If you're wondering what types of sports will work per position as a pairing in terms of helping your game, because maybe football is your main sport, you wonder what sports to play, here are some that'll work for you. I'll let you guys read through those. But I definitely highly encourage, especially you middle school and high school athletes, get out there and play some other sports while you still have the youth and energy to do that. It's very important to your development. Now, regarding spring football, I've been called anti-spring football before, but that's not really actually the case. What I am is I'm anti back-to-back football seasons for anyone, especially athletes under the age of 18. And the first point to that is because of their health and wellness. The fact is that playing spring ball on a good team could yield up to 13 games. If say you play for Burlington, they're a pretty good team last year. They won it all. I think they played about 13 games. And then if that same athlete goes and plays on a good high school team in the fall, maybe they play for Corpus, same area, and that's another 10 games once you get through offset. That's 23 games, with very little break in between, maybe a 2-week break in between. It's going to be detrimental to any player. And I don't think that's even up for debate. I played pro football for 11 years, and I've never played 23 games in a year, let alone in a 6-month span. And I was paid well to do it. I think it's unreasonable and frankly dangerous to ask our kids to do that, no matter how much they love the game. The second point is that high-level players will fall behind their competitors for scholarships and on the depth chart, especially to players who are using that offseason to train correctly. While you're playing spring ball, banging pads week in and out, you're not getting faster and you're depleting your body because this game was hard on the bodies, we all know. Your counterparts in Ohio, West Virginia, even Quebec, for that matter, are using that same time in the weight room, on the track, and on the grass, building themselves up to unleash on you in the fall. Understand, we're the only place in North America that plays back-to-back seasons of tackle football. They don't do it in Texas, Florida, Georgia, Ohio. These are California. These are pretty good football states that put out a ton of pros, and they know better than to be playing back-to-back. It's not something that's done, and it's something I think we really need to take a harder look at in our province. But before we do that, you guys have the control there, and every family's going to make their own decision. But back-to-back, I don't feel like is really necessary. If you're a player that expects a lot of playing time in the fall, I should say, if you're not a player that expects a lot of playing time in the fall, then I can perhaps see the merit of spring being an option for you, and then maybe move to fall. So that's the one exception I can think to where back-to-back seasons might work for you. If you're not going to play much in the fall, you're maybe moving up to varsity and you feel like you're going to be a bench warmer, maybe then spring makes sense. You can at least get those reps. But for those of you, most of you guys that are playing spring ball are high volume players. Your guys are playing a lot. And then you're also high volume players in the fall, and this becomes overkill. In terms of merits, though, I do understand that in many places the fall football is not as high a caliber as the spring, with spring ball being more like an all-star team. And there's definitely some merit to playing higher caliber players. The competitive and the iron sharpens iron, no question. And the skill needle should move during that time as well. But these can both be positives for sure in spring season. But still, I see no need to double up, and I stand on that. Now, flag and 7-on-7, these are leagues that are great skill builders for for skill and semi-skill players. So that's receivers, DBs, quarterbacks, running backs, linebackers, tight ends, and even linemen that like to run around and play, especially young linemen that just like to run around and move a lot. That's going to help you. I think that's a great benefit for you. In terms of flag and 7-on-7, it's never a bad thing to become a better mover and more skilled with the ball for any position. Both of those leagues or types of play teach defenders how to close in space, which is a great skill that translates to tackle, and cover offensive players, get a lot of touches and route work, which should translate back to tackle as well. So long as the program's teaching good fundamentals of these skills, I'm all for it as a tool in the offseason to use. That being said, I think a lot of people think that 7-on-7 and flag, mostly 7-on-7, somehow equate to opportunities in the tackle game. And that's not necessarily true. I'm in contact with scouts and coaches all the time, and I don't know one scout at any level that scouts 7-on-7 or flag as a real marker of play in the tackle game at any position, even quarterback. While the skill elements are the same, the element of physicality being absent makes both very different games from tackle. And I still think both have great merit as developmental tools. I'm not saying don't play them, but understand what they are and what they are not. Play them for the right reasons, I guess, is the best way I could put that. So now we'll go into the U.S. football camps. This is one I get this question a lot from parents and from kids. When's a good time? What should I, what are the differences? So I just want to kind of give you a bit of breakdown. First, there's over 800 schools in the United States and Canada that offer scholarships for the sport of football. Most of them, the vast majority of them, offer more than 25 scholarships. So somewhere between 25 and 85 scholarships is the typical. So there's a ton of money to be saved through scholarship in this game, which I'm definitely here for. Like, a lot of what I do with this work is for that reason, to try to help people get their school paid for. So here we're just going to go over the American camp circuit and try to give you some insight on how to approach U.S. camps for the level that you're at. First is combines. Okay, much of high-level football evaluation centers around measurable things like height, weight, and athletic ability. These can really open doors and garner opportunities for young players as much as, if not more than, their actual play, because much of football as a game, in terms of evaluation, centers around potential. Underclassmen should start off with combines and development camps and stay out of showcases until roughly their junior year. Every serious player should get a clock on them at some point in each offseason and the start of their fall season. so they can keep an updated profile for recruiters. These are players that are looking to get scouted. So not everybody's in it for that, but those that you are, that's definitely something you want to do. It doesn't have to be a U.S. combine, but a combine. Be prepared for combine style testing like 40-yard dash, pro agility, L drill, as well as jump tests like broad jump and vertical. And they'll even throw in a strength test like a bench press or a med ball toss. Each of these tests does have ways to train for them and cut through better times. There are hacks to these. So it is worthwhile to invest in that knowledge if you're serious about a scholarship at some point in your journey. D1 coaches are not permitted to attend third-party combines. That's a little-known fact. They can't go in person to third-party combines. They can go if it's at a school, but not third-party. So like like a Rivals combine or a Nike combine, D1 coaches aren't going to be there regardless of what they tell you in the flyer. But D2, 3, and NAIA coaches are allowed to attend them. So oftentimes these type of events will say college scouting, university coaches, and they won't name them. So you as parents, you as athletes will think, well, there's going to be big schools there. D1 schools aren't going to be there. Just important to know that. Combines are about getting verified numbers to keep your profile updated and send your numbers to schools you're interested in. That's really the main point of them in terms of the level that you guys are at. That's what you're trying to get out of a combine. And you only probably need to do one every 6 months if you can. Now for camps, there are two types of camps essentially. Football skills camps, which are designed to make you a better football player, see how you stack up against other players for your age group and position, and learn a varsity level skill set. Here you can expect position-specific drills by college-level coaches, one-on-one challenges, and sometimes even a bit of 7-on-7. These are mainly for underclass players looking to improve on a skill set before attending a showcase or a prospect camp. Next style of camp you have in the U.S. is called prospect camps, which are designed for college coaches to evaluate recruits on their campus. They're hosted by universities. Typically, they last 1 to 2 days and will have position-specific drills, combine testing, one-on-ones, and 7-on-7 competition along with classroom meetings sometimes. These are primarily for upperclassmen who are being actively recruited by that college host or prospective recruits looking to impress the coaches of that school by outshining some of the prospects that they invited. That's really who those prospect camps are for. And the last type of camp we'll go over today in the U.S. side is showcases. And these essentially help a top player get ranked on recruiting websites. They earn star ratings or gain interest from schools. Some are invite only. Most of the good ones are invite only and feature the best high school players in the nation, typically. Others are free. Well, not free, but they're free for anyone to go to, any varsity level to go to, but they do have a charge. But if you're going to go to a showcase, you should be pretty serious about playing in college. As long as you're willing to pay for them, you can go to those. Essentially, you're looking at two different types of exposure with showcase. You're looking at college coaches versus national media. And showcases make sense if you're invited and it's reputable, so long as schools that you're interested in attending are there. I always tell people, don't go to showcases if the schools that you want to go to aren't going. It's really kind of a waste of time. They typically do list the schools attending well in advance of registration so that you can review that as you're registering as a parent. Here's just a bit of a graphic regarding the difference between, the mega camps and exposure camps. Mega camps essentially bring several college coaches from the area to one campus or a neutral location and allows you to be evaluated by several schools at one time. If there's no mention of schools attending, it won't help your recruiting much. The invite-only showcases, and exposure camps are typically the best of the best, battling for star recognition and a rise in national rankings. So if you're looking to get invited to such showcases, you'll have to be nominated by a known high school coach, sports analyst, or earn your spot from one of those performance combines we talked about earlier by performing in the very top tier there. So at those combines, they often have, they'll have awards and stuff they're giving out for the top performers. Those top performers oftentimes get an invite to some of these invite-only showcases. Now, I'm going to shift gears to the Canadian side because they do run camps, and these programs run in stages from winter through summer. So I thought it'd be good to outline these as well. Oftentimes, we as parents might drive right by great camps on the way to lesser ones without really even knowing First is in the process is what's called ID camps. These are essentially combines, just like the U.S. And every serious player should go to at least one, I think, at least one provincial ID camp each year for two reasons. First, it's important to get combine times to update your recruiting profile every 6 months or so. Scouts and recruiters are looking for your most recent testing numbers. So when they come calling or they respond to your DM or your reach out and you tell them, I don't know what I run because I haven't timed in a year or two, sometimes that doesn't really help your case at all or make you seem like a serious player. Second, any serious player should want to get on the radar of recruiters, and you sports coaches will be and recruit those ID camps, both in person as well as they receive the data from them. Cuts are made from these camps typically because these are going towards a provincial team usually or a national team, which gives you a chance to outshine other players, which is a skill to learn and see how you stack up outside of your local playing circle, which I think is a really big thing in specifically Ontario, but Canada in general. Getting outside of your playing circle where you might be a big fish in a small pond is important. These typically will take place prior to the spring season, so it's a good tune-up for all players. Then there's development camps. These are just like they sound. They're very on par with the U.S. skill camps we talked about earlier. Should you make it to a development camp, you'll be coached by varsity and university level coaches. They'll build your skill level through position drills, one-on-ones, 7-on-7, even team periods. And there'll likely be plays to learn and often even film sessions. Each of these settings is a chance to separate yourself from the competition. And then we've got red black weekend, or at least in our province, but any positional cut down or provincial cut down, they kind of work all the same. And these are the equivalent of a U.S. showcase in the sense that they're invitation only. You have to have made that level to get there. And they will also have a strong presence of university coaches in live and present evaluating, as well as university coaches running the meetings and the drills. There's usually a cut process that happens as well. And so your performance, at this weekend will often influence your ranking outside of going into the fall season here, as it stands with those schools or even with some of the local or national rankings. And then there's the provincial and national team. Making a team like this does have serious merit in a number of ways, whether athletes realize that or not. Anytime there's a large cut down, there'll be more eyes on those that do make the team. Our U16 team that I coach, I think we cut it down from like 400 kids to 40. It definitely does boost the profile of those kids at each cut. Those numbers and those names do get sent out to universities and does boost their profile, no question, and their ranking to some degree. Aside from that, iron sharpens iron, like I mentioned before. So those practices and training camps with that team will really be invaluable to your development. You're not going to be able to match that in the club setting. I don't care who you're playing, what rivalry it is. You're not going to be able to match that caliber in practicing games. Not to mention playing the best teams around the country, of course, elevates your play through the caliber itself. And then I just want to touch on just some of those key points. Testing yourself against better competition. Iron does sharpen iron, access to film and highlights against high-level competition. That's an understated one, I think, because getting film of you playing on a high-level team against other high-level teams trumps any club or high school film that you're going to have. They do take into account the level. You can also track your numbers and update your profile from that. And there's minimal body strain. These programs give a lot of breaks in between. They might work and then break and then work and then break. So it's not the every week grind that club ball gives you in the spring and summer. So it does still allow you to train, because it is virtually impossible to develop while you're performing for those of you that are playing through the spring and summer. Okay, so essentially that wraps up the webinar portion. I'm going to give everybody maybe 5 minutes. I guess my clock says 9:02. We're going to jump back on here at, say, 10 after 9, and I'll be able to take on any questions that anybody has. I'm just going to look real quick through the chat and make sure there's none. I didn't miss anything. Perfect. Okay, good. So everybody's good there. All right. So anyone, and again, that's not mandatory. Anyone who has any questions for me, just come back on the same link at 9:10, and I'll be able to answer those for you. Everybody else, I really appreciate you guys coming out, and I do hope it was helpful. If it wasn't, that I'm glad that you know as much as you do. But I figured I'd help some out that felt they needed it. So I'll see you guys in 10 minutes, or sorry, 5 minutes for those of you coming back. Thanks. Have a good night.
Thank you, Coach.
All right.